Hello, everyone. It's me, Fat Albert. Today we are reading, and I'm here instead of Stonesy Boy. Hello, everyone. My name's Stonesy Boy, and welcome back to Reading with Stonesy. We're back to reading, which is amazing considering you're on a segment called Reading with Stonesy. So, reading on a segment called Reading with Stonesy, it's quite amazing, as a matter of fact. So, you should really marvel in it, Okay, I'll shut up. Anyways, today we are reading chapter 16 to 18, so 16, 17, 18. There's only 16 pages, so this should be fairly quick, which is nice because I have a hurt throat because I am sick. So, without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 16. Bobby, Johnny, and Ben were off to find a witch, and seemed entirely uncertain about this plan. It had been his plan to begin with. If Johnny had an opinion one way or another, he was keeping his thoughts to himself. For either part, Bobby was happy to have something to do. As soon as they started moving again, the despair she felt back in Savannah town had fallen away. The new hope had bloomed in a hollow space where worries lived. That hope had carried her through all long day of walking, and on into the night. Bobby had always thought of some people were naturally hopeful. That optimism was simply a personality trait. It wasn't until confronted with tragedy that she realized the truth. Hope was something you worked for. It looked constant effort to seek solutions, to believe those solutions were out there, in the face of ceaseless harrowing problems. Because you need to see these problems, they're undeniable. But the solutions, those had to be crafted. They were on grassy expanse, but wasn't quite like the plains that surrounded Plaintown. Even in the moonlight, Bobby could see grass here that was slightly discolored, less vibrant shade of green than she was used to seeing. Nearby, there were sparse trees strewn with vines. A shallow pool of murky water, more like a huge puddle than a lake. Bobby's boots were made a squelching sound. "It's entirely wet here," he said. "I'll take you to the nicest places, don't I?" said Ben. "We should be right on the edge of the swamp now, in the middle of the night, which is good for Jubilant Johnny over there, but not great for us." He swiped at the vine with his sword. "Have your weapon ready. We can run into trouble pretty quickly." Bobby did as he suggested, switching to the lead to her offhand, and switching her sword to her right. She looked briefly from her gleaming iron sword to Ben's sorry stone version. "I've been wondering about something," she said, considering her words carefully. She never entirely sure how she would bend off. She seemed to be a lot of sore points. "You've been adventuring for a while now, right? So why don't you have a better gear?" "I did have better gear," he answered, "but some pretty great stuff, in fact. But shortly before I met you, I lost it." "That seems careless." "I took precautions," Ben argued. "But everything was stolen from me, by someone I trusted, actually." "Oh," Bobby said. "I'm sorry, that's hard." "Yeah," said Ben, "thanks. Although—" "Oh, please don't," said Ben. "Please don't what?" "Please don't turn into one of this big sister teachable moments," he said. "I don't do that," Bobby ejected, which a raised eyebrow. "I don't. I just thought it was worth pointing out that your reaction to getting looted was apparently to come to Plaintown so you could loot us. So maybe it's worth examining whether to think of the cycle of plundering as a problem, and, if so, whether your actions are particularly responsible for perpetuating the cycle." Ben groaned, and Johnny echoed him. "Hey, I think I understand why he makes that noise now," Ben said. "He's totally exasperated by you." "So rude," said Bobby. "I hope we run into the wild wolves that raised you, so that I can ask them where they went wrong." As they walked, the ground became more sodden, and the trees grew closer together. Soon, it was hard to see the moon past the towering trunks and their dense hanging foliage. "I've never seen trees like these before," said Bobby, and pressed a hand on one as they passed. "They're mangroves," Ben explained. "They grow big and strong around water." He took another step and suddenly up to his knees in swamp water. "Ick," he said. "I prefer solid ground myself." Bobby growled, which itself wasn't unusual, but this time he tempered off the different. He sent prickles down Bobby's back. It somehow was like a warning. She raised her sword and turned to peer the shadows beneath the trees. She saw a light wavering in the water, a green luminescence that she took at first was some sort of otherworldly flame. She heard stories of ghost lights haunting the overworld's mires, luring unwavering travelers to a murky, drowning doom. But she isn't certain that those spooky stories meant to dissuade young villagers from leaving the safety of their homes. She rubbed her eyes, blinked fiercely, and looked again. She saw now what was a ghostly light, but instead of quivering, gleaming its mass, its wet surface reflected the moonlight. that it was separated from within. It was a sickly shade of green, and as it propelled itself forward in a bouncing motion, Bobby could see a shadowy impression of its face on an otherwise inhuman form. "It's cute," she said, lowering her sword. "Sure, cute," said Ben. "Too bad it's a malevolent ball of slime intent on destroying us." Bobby smirked. "You said that about the llamas, too." "Llamas are jerks, and everyone knows it," Ben said hotly. He stepped between Bobby and the slime, brandishing his sword. "I'm starting to question your judgment." Ben waited until the slime took one more quivering leap forward. Then he slashed out with the sword. The slime caught mid-leap was an easy target. But it did not fall to Ben's sword. Instead, it split apart, forming two separate slimes, with each half the size of the original. "I'm questioning your judgment," Bobby said, lifting her sword again, "because now there are two of them, and they're even cuter at that size," she thought, but did not say. She stood shoulder to shoulder with Ben, waiting to see if slimes could press the attack. "Should we retreat?" she asked. "It's too dark out here," he said. "And there are so much things than slimes. Last thing we want to do is run into another threat while we have slimes on our back." "Okay," said Bobby. "Then I have the one on the left." Bobby, then paying attention, just as Ben said before, waited for the slime to make its move, and she caught it mid-leap. To her consternation, it split in half again. "This is ridiculous," she said. To her right, Ben was having the same issue. "Still think you're cute?" "I mean, kind of," she said. "Now they're pocket-sized." "Just smite them, please," said Ben. "Smite them," she echoed. "Do adventures actually talk like that?" Despite her teasing, Bobby prepared to do as Ben had suggested. Then Johnny leaped suddenly forward, gobbling up one of the tiny slimes in a single gulp. Said Bobby, stopping in her track. "Ew," said Ben. "That can't be healthy." Johnny made a gurgling noise, and Bobby decided should take care of the remaining slimes before her brother tried to help himself to seconds. "Smite," she said, thwacking the sword to the dirt. The remaining slimes were so small that they made for difficult targets. "Come on, Ben, smite, smite." "I'm smiting," he said, laughing. Johnny watched them as they slashed at the tiny hopping mobs, and he realized that somewhat silently burp. Chapter 17. The swamp was still and silent, except for the frogs moving just outside the reach. Ben took a moment to enjoy their frantic hopping. He rarely had a reason to pass through the swamp, and never been amphibians anywhere else. Bobby seemed charmed by them, too. Even her slobbering sibling stood transfixed by the sight, which was good, because it kept young Zombie from rocking the boat, literally. After the slime smiting, Ben had directed Bobby to collect the slime balls left behind. "You never know what might come in handy later," he told her sagely, and he was pretty certain she'd appreciate the advice. Even though she made a face at him, while she gathered goods and kept jaundiced Johnny off the back, Ben had hacked into the mangrove to collect the wood he needed to construct a small rowboat. Then he realized that none of them were murderous zombie, and he gathered enough wood to craft a second boat. "I don't see why we're in separate boats," Bobby called from across the water. "Were you worried about getting separated?" "I'm worried about a lot of things," Ben answered. "Getting my nose bitten off by your brother is pretty high on my list." Bobby sighed. "He's probably full after eating that slime," she said, as if it would make Ben feel any less concerned about the boy's appetites. It was in the heart of the swamp that Ben saw he had hoped and dreaded to see. The trees fall away, and the draping vines parted, and the rickety structure loomed before them, rising out of the water on a tall wooden stilts. In the moonlight, it looked like some strange boxy animal standing on legs too thin to reasonably support its weight. "There," Ben whispered, hoping he would be heard by Bobby and no one else. "That's the swamp's hut. There should be a witch inside." "I hope they're feeling helpful," said Bobby. "I'd hate to be turning into a frog or something." "Oh, don't worry about that," said Ben. "They'll probably just outright kill us." Bobby chuckled weakly. "And you think I'll be able to reason with them?" "I don't know about reasoning with them," said Ben, "but I hope you'll be able to communicate with them at least." He shrugged. "I admit, it's a long shot. I've encountered a couple of witches in the past, and they don't make sense of anything they said. But if it was true of Wandering Trader, too, and you're chatting them up without any problem, so witches are all about potions, right?" Bobby asked. "All I can say for sure is that, on 2 different occasions, a witch has thrown a potion at my face," he smirked. "And if it happens a third time, I'm going to start wondering if I'm a problem." "You're the problem," Bobby deadpanned. Ben ignored her jab. "So, how do you want to do this?" he asked her. "I don't know," said Bobby. "I figure I'd just ask politely for information." Ben frowned. "Sure, after we sneak into the witch's hut, knock them out, and tie them to a chair, right?" "What? No," Bobby said, was obviously appalled by the thought. "Why would they tell us something after we invaded their home and threatened them?" "Because our threats will be very convincing. Adventurers, honestly," Bobby said. "You can't just go acting around as if you're entitled to everything." "Please stop yelling," said Ben. Bobby appeared immediately remorseful. "Ben, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I wasn't worried about my feelings," Ben said in a low voice. "I was just worried that you were being too loud." It was the moment that the wicked cackle rang out across the water. Ben's gaze snapped to the hut, where a figure had appeared in the open doorway. The figure resembled a villager, but wore peaked and flowing purple robes. Despite being the source of miraculous laughter, they did not seem especially good-natured. "Witch," he said, pointing. "Yes, thank you, I see them," Bobby sang. then raised her voice. Hello, kindly witch, mage of the mire, Bruja of Burring, esteemed wise person of the wilderness. The witch had a splash potion in her grip, but Ben gestured for Bobby to get to the point already. We are on a quest to seek your aid, she said. You see, my brother's been transformed, and I was hoping you know of a cure, or of that you would invent one. The witch paced up and down the porch of the hut, waving the flask around and yapping unintelligibly. Oh no, said Bobby. I can't understand what they're saying. She turned to Ben. They're almost sound like a villager, but not quite. I think I'm picking up some hostility, though. You think so? Said Ben. Hostility, you said. And with a sharp cackle, the witch hurled a flask at Bobby. Duck, said Ben, and Bobby didn't listen. He took a full brunt of splash potion and a flask shattered against her. Hey, that hurt, said Bobby. Why didn't you duck? Cried Ben. My baby brother is right behind me, said Bobby. I couldn't let him get hit. I'd never been so glad I'd be an only child, muttered Ben, and he paddled out in front of Bobby. Hey, witchy, he cried, waving his arm. Why don't you aim over here instead? What are you doing? Bobby asked him with a witch madcap cackling. I have a shield. I'll be fine, he told her. You sneak around back and build a staircase up to the porch. And then what do I do? Bobby asked, already paddling away. Ben met with an upcoming potion and a shield. It shattered as he battled lingering fumes away. Try asking politely one more time, said Ben. Really? Said Bobby. No, he said. Hit him over the head with something heavy. Or sick that nightmare you call a brother on him. That's a rude thing to say, and we'll discuss it later, Bobby called, as he battled around to the far side of the hut. Ben, through a combination of taunts, gestures, and experimental dance moves, managed to keep the witch's attention on him. As he dodged a fifth potion, Ben began to wonder when Bobby would make her dramatic entrance. He kept expecting to see her sword poking through the witch, or perhaps Johnny would tackle the mob, sailing over the edge of the balcony and dragging the witch into murky water below. Then Ben would have a perfect view of whatever ending befell their witchery adversary. As he dodged the sixth potion, he called with a sing-song voice. What's taking you so long up there? We're done, said Bobby, and her voice was not coming from above. It reappeared from around the far side of the stilts, rowing her boat toward Ben, Johnny gnawing absentmindedly on a bone. What do you mean you're done? Said Ben, and distracted he ducked a thrown potion just in time. I thought you were going to smite the witch. I was always smiting with you, Bobby said, and she smiled. I went through the witch's things, found a recipe book with different formulas the cleric ever had. Maybe there's something there we can use. And there where the bone come from? And I asked, a little bit afraid to answer. Oh, that was just lying on the floorboard, said Bobby. Is that sanitary? Asked Ben. Well, he wanted to eat the cat, said Bobby, so it felt like it was a good compromise. Ben sighed. I guess zombies probably don't have to worry about germs, he said. Then he turned his head up toward the witch. You don't know how lucky you are. If that had been up to me there, you would have been smited or smote. I'm sorry about the burglary, Bobby called up to the witch as she rowed past Ben and back toward shore. I want to break the callous cycle of looting, so I'll try to find a way to take your book back to you one day. As Ben rode after her, he called over his shoulder, but we're keeping the bone. Chapter 18. The sun threatened to rise at any moment, and Johnny put up a fuss when Bobby tried to put a pumpkin on his head. So Ben suggested he set up camp as soon as they had put a little distance between themselves and the witch. The spot should be fine, Ben said, and he brought up his pickaxe to bear against the low, soggy hill in the outskirts of the swamp. Within seconds, he had carved out a small space just below ground level, with a torchlight and room for beds and crafting stations, in case they decided to stay there for the day. Bobby sat beneath the torch and set immediately to examine the book she'd stolen. It's not completely coherent, said Bobby. It's mostly scribbles and drawings, but I can interpret some of it, especially with the open pages. He shouted up for Ben to see. Look at this first entry. Ben leaned through the look, but then as soon as he got close, Johnny growled menacingly. Why don't you summarize it for me, he suggested. Bobby nodded. Well, from what I can tell, the witch wasn't always a witch. They were a village cleric, and they used the book to record their experiments. She flipped through the pages. Something bad happened. A storm, a bolt of lightning, transformed them. She looked at her brother, tied to a wooden post. They're like Johnny in a way, she said sadly. Keep reading, said Ben. I'll check your gear, maybe patch things up with some torches. You hungry? Bobby frowned. I don't think I can eat when we're clear of the swamp. It smells funny in here. Yeah, Ben agreed. Now that you mention it, it smells sort of like rotten flesh. I wonder what that could be. Bobby sniffed the air, and then grimaced. All the more reason to find a cure, he said, and turned back to the book in her lap. It was some time later than Ben was gnawing on a loaf of semi-stale bread with Bobby hopped suddenly to her feet. It's here! It's actually here! She looked over at Ben, a huge smile spreading across her face. The witch must have been looking for a cure in her own condition. They were documenting cures for all sorts of things. Everything from poisoning to bad luck curses to zombification. She passed him the book, opened the page with a hand-drawn illustration. He recognized the image immediately. That's a golden apple, he said. Is it a real thing? Bobby said. It exists? Yeah, said Ben. It exists. They're even craftable. Bobby looked the book back and flipped to the next page. We need one. If I understand this right, a golden apple, then combined with the effects of a potion of weakness, will cure Johnny completely and forever. Tears welled in Bobby's eyes. I knew it was possible. I just knew it. I guess I shouldn't have doubted you, Ben said. That's right, said Bobby, chuckling and wiped her cheeks. Are you a hugger? She asked. I think I'd like a hug. Sure, said Ben, and stepped toward her, and then stopped short when Johnny growled and put his lead. Or not, said Ben. Maybe later. Bobby nodded, her tears gone. Tell you what, she said. If you could tell me how to craft a golden apple, that would count as dozens of hug in one. It's a simple recipe, but it would take a long time to get our hands on enough gold, Ben replied. We might have the better luck trying to find one. My buddy Logan found one once. Do you know where Logan is now? Well, no, Ben said, and he felt a little pang. And anyway, he ate that one. He said it was the most delicious thing he had ever tasted, but I had to take his word for it. He did tell me where he found it, though. Hold on a minute. Ben rummaged through his things, pulling out the maps he'd taken from two photographers' house. He flipped through them, laying them out on the floor, searching for something he'd spotted earlier. There, he said, pointing at a small rectangle in the heart of the forest. A woodland mansion. He looked up at Bobby. It's not a sure thing, but you can sometimes find golden apples there. A mansion? Like in the storybooks? Bobby swooned. Is this the family who lives there nice? Do they want nothing more than a bounty of gold-plated fruits and vegetables with well-traveled strangers? Yeah, it's sort of like that, except the complete opposite, Ben shook his head. I'd better take another look at our gear, and you should get some sleep, because we're in a very tough fight. Time when Bobby failed to take his advice, Ben knew better than to take it personally. He told her to get some sleep, and he knew she tried. But she was too anxious about her plan, too eager to get her brother back to normal. She lay in bed, but sleep wouldn't take her. Ben wondered if the fact that Johnny was looming right in the front of their bed contributed to her insomnia, too. He really watches me over when I sleep? She asked. Every time, said Ben. He won't let me get anywhere near you. We've come a long way, said Bobby. First few days as a zombie, he tried to eat me every chance he got. He seemed to consider something. Hey, come here, she said. Ben looked up at the table. No way, he said. Didn't you just hear me? I get close. He gets bitey. Here, Bobby said, and she tossed an iron boot in his direction. Put that on your hand. Before he could object, he said, if you wanted, we would skip the part where you whine about it and get right to the part where you do what I ask you to do. You underestimate me, Ben said, taking up the boot. I can whine while I do what you ask me to do. Is my hand going to smell like a foot after this? Johnny, look over there, said Bobby, and she pointed to the very underestimating wall of dirt. The zombie boy dutifully turned his head, however, gazing in the dirt, and held some great secret. With her brother distracted, Bobby slipped out of the bed, grabbed Johnny's bone from the floor, and handed it to Ben. He took it with a free hand. Great, said Ben. Now your hand smells like foot, and the other smells like zombie saliva. The bone is awfully wet. He narrowed his eyes at Bobby. And it's whining. That isn't whining. I'm just stating a fact. The sound of Ben's voice, Johnny turned a low growl at the throat. He took a few steps toward him and stopped him short. Okay, said Bobby. I want to get into his range. Offer him a bone. And what if he ignores the bone and goes after me? Asked Ben. That's fine, said Bobby. He can't chew through iron, and he can't maneuver very much if he's tied to his post. Keep your armored hand up in front of you, and you'll be okay. Ben crept forward toward both of his hands raised. There you go, Johnny, he cooed. Nice, slimy chew toy just for you, he frowned. To be clear, I'm talking about the bone. I'm not slimy. Johnny ignored Ben's humor, and he ignored the bone. As soon as Ben was in range, Zombie attempted to bite him, as Bobby had predicted. However, the boy's teeth didn't penetrate the makeshift gauntlet. It didn't stop him from trying, though. Johnny kept his mouth affixed to the boot, gnawing and drawing in equal measure. What is he even doing? Ben said. He's learning, Bobby said. Eventually, he figured out that trying to bite you only gets him a mouthful of bland iron, and that he'll be much happier going for the bone. Eventually, echoed Ben. How long will this take? Well, for me, it took a few hours. That isn't too bad, said Ben. A few hours every day, Bobby clarified, for many days in a row. Ben looked at Johnny, who was still nodding away futilely. I guess we all learn at our own pace, he said, sighing. But then he had an idea. So how about I give you a lesson now? Bobby seemed wary. What do you want to teach me? So many things, Ben said. He smirked at her. Let's start with combat. And that's the end of that. Oh, goodness. It took me 22 minutes to record that. I cannot record when I'm sick. Never again. At least, I'm not doing that ever again. Where's my bookmark? So, the experience of recording while sick, if you want to know, the viewers, whatever, is basically every 5 sentences I have to stop, pause the audio, and cough. Which basically makes this book impossible. However, this does not mean I'm done. I shall never be done because I hate myself that much more. Alright, well, let's lift this baby up. Some of them got deleted, of course. So that episode has been done. Next time we're reading a lot of pages, 22 to be exact. Oh, I did not mean to checkmark that. Oopsies. 101 to 123, which is the first and final, or actually it's the final movement of this. 1 to 123. Do. And with this one, it is chapter 19, not 91, 19 to, okay, 123, 22. So again, only 3 chapters, but still, a lot of pages. So yeah, hope you have a super fantastic, wonderful day. If you like Big Fishing, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye!